I stood on the graduation stage in front of 3,000 people gripping the microphone while my heart pounded like a war drum. Down below, in the very center of the front row, sat my parents. They were dressed impeccably, holding flowers and a camera, their faces glowing as if today were the day their perfect family would be on display. But here's the ironic part, they weren't there for me. They came to watch Victoria, my twin sister, receive her diploma. In their minds, there was only one star today. And me, I was the shadow. The one who had stood outside the frame for years. They had no idea I was graduating from the same university. And they certainly couldn't imagine that the person stepping up to deliver the keynote speech would be me, the child they once said straight to my face wasn't worth investing in. The moment my name was announced, I saw my father's hands freeze on his camera. My mother went still, the bouquet slipping from her lap. And for one brief second, for the first time in my life, they truly looked at me, not through me, not as a defective copy of Victoria. But listen, this story didn't begin on that stage. It began 4 years earlier in my family's living room, when my father looked me straight in the eye and said something I will never forget. And that sentence pushed me so far that today they can't ignore me anymore. Summer 2021. The acceptance letters arrived on the same April afternoon. Victoria got into Whitmore University, a prestigious private school with tuition of $65,000 a year. I, Frances, was accepted to Eastbrook State, a solid public university, $25,000 a year. Still expensive, but at least survivable. That night, my father called a family meeting in the living room. He sat in his leather chair like a CEO, finalizing a budget. My mother sat on the couch, hands clasped tightly. Victoria stood by the window, her eyes shining as if she could already see her crown. I sat across from them, gripping my acceptance letter like it might shield me. My father began, his voice cold and firm. "We need to talk about finances." Then, he turned to Victoria first. "Your mother and I will cover everything at Whitmore. Tuition, dorm, living expenses, everything." Victoria squealed with excitement. My mother smiled softly as if they had just done the right thing. Then my father turned to me. "Frances, we've decided we won't be funding your education." It took me several seconds to process the words. I looked at my mother, she avoided my eyes. I looked at Victoria, she was already looking down at her phone as if this had nothing to do with her. My father continued as though explaining an investment portfolio. "Victoria has leadership qualities. She's outgoing, good at networking. She'll go far, she's worth the investment." He paused for a beat, then delivered the final line like a blade to my chest. "You're smart, Frances, but you're not special. Investing in you wouldn't bring a return." I didn't cry. I just sat there and realized something. To them, I wasn't a daughter. I was a bad investment. The favoritism didn't magically appear the day the college letters arrived. It had lived in our house for years, like a stain everyone could see but pretended not to. When we were 16, Victoria got a brand new Honda Civic wrapped with a bright red bow in the driveway. We all posed for photos, smiling like we were in a commercial. Me, I received Victoria's old laptop, the screen cracked, the battery lasting maybe 40 minutes. Mom said lightly, "We can't afford 2 cars." Sounds reasonable, right? Except somehow they could still afford ski trips for Victoria, designer outfits, an expensive prom dress, and a summer in Spain. Family vacations made it even clearer. Victoria always had her own hotel room. I slept on sofas, roll-away beds. Once I was even shoved into a tiny closet-like space the resort branded as a cozy nook. In plain terms, it was a storage alcove with better marketing. Family photos were the same. Victoria stood in the center of every frame, glowing like the center of the universe. I stood at the edge, sometimes literally cut off halfway, as if I only needed to be there for appearance. When I was 17, I asked Mom why it was like this. She sighed. "You're imagining things. I love you both the same. But actions don't lie." A few months before the college decision, I accidentally saw her phone open to a text conversation with Aunt Linda. I shouldn't have read it. But I did. Mom had written, "I feel bad for Frances. But Harold's right. She's not outstanding. We have to be realistic." I put the phone down, walked away, and understood clearly this wasn't in my head. It was real. That night I didn't cry. I had cried too many times before over forgotten birthdays, hand-me-down gifts being pushed out of family photos like an extra body. This time I just sat in my room staring at the cracked laptop screen, and faced the raw truth to my parents. I wasn't their daughter. I was a bad investment. But in that moment, something else clicked inside me. If they wouldn't invest in me, I would invest in myself. I opened my browser and slowly typed full scholarships for independent students. The internet lagged, but the search results felt like an escape route. I grabbed a notebook, a pen, and started calculating at 2 a.m. Eastbrook State $25,000 a year. 4 years $100,000. Parents $0. My summer job savings $2,300. The gap sat there like a black hole. If I couldn't fill it, I had 3 options, and all of them were ugly: drop out, take on 6-figure debt, and bend under it for the rest of my life, or attend part-time and stretch it out for 7 or 8 years. Every path led straight back to the label my father had stamped on me. Failure. I scrolled through piles of scholarships. Some were scams, some had expired, some required things I simply didn't have. Then I found one from Eastbrook, a merit scholarship for independent and first-generation students. Full tuition, plus a stipend, but only 5 students selected each year. Then I saw another name that almost felt like a joke: the Whitfield Scholarship. A full ride plus an extra $10,000 a year. Only 20 recipients nationwide. I actually laughed, but I saved it anyway. Because by then I understood something: I could either live out the script they had written for me, or I could write my own. So I started assembling my life like a war machine, rough, exhausting, but functional. Job: Hashon barista at Morning Grind. Shift 5:00–8:00 a.m. I stood there making coffee while the rest of the world slept. I told myself other people sleep to dream. I stay awake to change my life. Income about $800. Month. Job: #2 weekend dorm janitor. Mopping floors, taking out trash, scrubbing bathrooms, the smell of chemicals clinging to my hands. Income $400. Job: #3. Aiming for a teaching assistant position in the economics department. If I got it, $300. Month. I did the math. Around $1,500 a month. Roughly $18,000 a year. It sounded like a lot, but I was still several thousand short of tuition. Which meant one thing: I had to win a scholarship. There was no backup plan. I chose the cheapest housing near campus, a tiny room in a shared house with 4 other people. $300 a month, utilities included. No air conditioning. No privacy. No picture-perfect college life. Just a bed, an old desk, and a brutal schedule. 4:00 a.m. Wake up 5:00 a.m. Coffee shift 9:00 a.m. 5:00 p.m. Class 6:00 p. Study, work, TA 11:00 p.m. 4:00 a.m. Sleep 4–5 hours. While Victoria was posting photos from Cancun, I was stuffing thrift store blankets into an old suitcase, whispering one promise to myself: this is the price of freedom. If you've ever had to grind like this, just to escape being underestimated, then you understand exactly what I mean. That first Thanksgiving, I sat alone in my tiny rented room. Wind slipped through the cracks in the door, as if to remind me, you don't belong anywhere. I called home, pressed the phone to my ear. I could hear laughter plates clinking, the noise of a full family dinner, a celebration I didn't have a seat at. "Hello, Francis." My mother's voice sounded distant, like she was talking while looking somewhere else. "Happy Thanksgiving," I said, trying to keep my tone steady. "Is Dad there?" I wanted to talk to him for a minute. Silence for a few seconds. Then I clearly heard my father's voice in the background, not bothering to lower it. "Tell her I'm busy." Just one sentence. But it dropped like a stone, crushing the smallest hope I still had that maybe they missed me. My mom came back on the line, her cheerfulness painfully forced. "Your father's busy. Victoria's telling the funniest story." "Okay." I swallowed. "I'm fine. Are you eating enough? Do you need anything?" I looked around my room, instant noodles on the table, a secondhand blanket, library books, because I couldn't afford to buy them. "No, Mom. I don't need anything." I hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt empty. I opened Facebook. The first post on my feed was Victoria's. A photo of Mom, Dad, and Victoria sitting around the dinner table, candles glowing, turkey shining with glaze. The caption read, "Thankful for my amazing family." I zoomed in on the picture. 3 chairs. 3 place settings. No seat for me. They hadn't even bothered to pretend. That night, something inside me changed shape. The pain was no longer about begging to be loved. It turned into something cold and clear. From now on, I would live without needing them. Second semester of freshman year, I enrolled in Microeconomics 101 with Dr. Margaret Smith, the legend of Eastbrook. Rumor had it she'd been teaching for 30 years, published in every major journal, and hadn't given anyone an A in 5 years. It sounded like academic death. I sat in the third row, took notes like a soldier, did assignments like failing this class meant failing at life. When I turned in my first essay, I braced myself for a B-. A week later, the paper came back. In the top corner, A+. I hadn't even finished processing that when I noticed a line of red ink beneath the grade. "See me after class." My heart dropped straight into my stomach. What did I do wrong? Was she calling me up to tear it apart? After class, I walked to the front. Dr. Smith was packing her bag, silver hair neatly pinned into a bun, glasses resting low on her nose. She glanced at me over the frames. "Frances Townsend, yes. Sit down." I sat. She flipped open my essay and tapped a finger lightly against the page. "This is one of the best undergraduate papers I've read in 20 years, she said. "Where did you learn to write like this?" "Nowhere special," I replied. "Public school. No advanced programs." She studied me for a moment, then asked bluntly, "What about your family? Do you have academic support at home?" I hesitated then, for the first time in my life, told an adult the truth. My family doesn't support my education. Not financially. Not emotionally. She set her pen down and looked directly at me. "Tell me." So I did. I told her everything. When I finished, she said one sentence that changed the direction of my life. "You know the Whitfield Scholarship, don't you? Don't tell me it's impossible. Let me help you be seen." The next 2 years felt like a loop with no pause button. 400 A.M. Up. 500 A.M. Coffee shift. 900 A.M. 500 P.M. Classes. Evenings library, until my eyes burned. 4 to 5 hours of sleep felt luxurious. Every single day. No parties, no football games, no late-night pizza runs. Other people were making memories. I was making GPA. I kept a 4 like it was life support. There were moments I almost broke. Once, I fainted during a shift at the cafe. They shook me awake and sent me to the clinic. The doctor said it plainly, exhaustion and dehydration. I nodded, drank water, and showed up to work the next day. Because if I didn't work, I didn't get paid. And if I didn't get paid, I couldn't stay in school. Another time I sat inside Rebecca's car. She had lent it to me for an interview, closed the door, and cried for 20 minutes. Not because of one specific thing, but because everything piled up at once. The fatigue, the loneliness, the feeling that I was running a race with no one cheering. Then I wiped my face, took a deep breath, and stepped out of the car. I didn't allow myself to stay weak for long. Because I understood one thing: if I stopped, my father's words, "not worth investing in," would become true. So I kept going. Quietly. Steadily. Day by day, I turned survival into something far more dangerous. Progress. Junior year, Dr. Smith called me into her office. Her office was always silent, like a library, filled only with the sound of turning pages and the faint tap of her pen. She looked at me, direct as ever. "I'm going to nominate you for Whitfield." I froze. "You're serious?" She nodded. 10 essays. 3 interview rounds. Brutal screening. "This will be the hardest thing you've ever done." She paused, her eyes sharp as blades but her voice steady. "But you've already survived things harder than this." From that day on, my life was swallowed whole by applications. I wrote about resilience, about ambition, about dragging myself out of the mud. I edited every sentence like I was repairing a crack in my spine. I learned how to tell my story without begging for pity, just stating the facts. In the middle of it all, Victoria texted me the first time in months. "Mom said you're not coming home for Christmas. Kinda sad, TBH. I stared at the message for a few seconds. Then I flipped my phone face down and turned back to my laptop. The truth was, I couldn't afford the plane ticket. But even if I could, I wasn't sure I wanted to sit at a table that hadn't saved me a seat in years. That Christmas I stayed in my rented room, ate instant noodles, looked at the small paper Christmas tree Rebecca had folded for me. No noise, no pretending. And strangely, it was the most peaceful Christmas of my life. That's when I understood Whitfield wasn't just a scholarship. It was a door I could walk through and finally close on the darkness that had held me captive. The email came at 6:47 a.m. I had just stepped out of my apartment and hadn't even finished my coffee when I saw the subject line. Whitfield Foundation, final round notification. My hands were shaking so badly I had to tap the screen twice to open it. Congratulations. You have been selected as one of 50 finalists, 50 candidates, 20 spots. For most people, that sounded like opportunity. For me, it instantly became another problem: money. The final round interview was in New York, nearly 800 miles from my campus. I opened my banking app. $847. A last-minute flight would cost at least $400. One night at a hotel would wipe out the rest. And rent was due in 2 weeks. I stared at the screen, my heart sinking. The opportunity of a lifetime was right there, and my wallet was choking it. I almost closed my laptop. Then there was a knock on the door. Rebecca. She stepped in, took one look at my face, and knew something was wrong. Frankie, you look like you just saw a ghost. I handed her my phone. She read it and screamed. The kind of scream that probably made the neighbors jump. You're going! I don't have enough money. Take the bus. She pulled out her phone and checked immediately. $53. Leaves Thursday night. Gets to Manhattan Friday morning. I shook my head. I don't want to borrow. Rebecca cut me off and grabbed my shoulders. I'm not asking. I'm telling you. This is your shot. So I got on that overnight bus. My neck stiff, my body exhausted, wearing a thrift store blazer that didn't quite fit. Manhattan was freezing at dawn. I walked into a waiting room filled with polished finalists, tailored suits, confident smiles, some with parents by their side, as if the scholarship was already theirs. I looked down at my worn-out shoes and reminded myself I don't need to belong. I just need to deserve it. 2 weeks after the New York interview, I was walking to my morning shift when my phone buzzed. The email subject made me stop dead in the middle of the sidewalk. Whitfield Scholarship Decision. I opened it, read the first line, then read it again. And again. We are pleased to inform you. You have been selected as a Whitfield Scholar. Class of 2025. I couldn't breathe. The world kept moving, bikes rushing past, someone swearing as they brushed my shoulder, traffic roaring, but inside my head there was only one sound: I'm free. I sank down onto the curb and cried. Not pretty tears. Not cinematic tears. 3 years of 4 a.m. alarms. Nights clinging to instant noodles, fainting from exhaustion. All of it poured out at once. Whitfield meant full tuition, an additional $10,000 a year for living expenses, and most importantly, the right to transfer to any partner university in their network. That night, Dr. Smith called me. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the pride beneath it. Francis Whitmore is on the partner list. I froze. Whitmore. Victoria's school. She continued, if you transfer, you could graduate from there with top honors. And the Whitfield Scholar traditionally delivers the commencement address. I was silent for a moment before answering. I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing it for my career. She gave a soft laugh. And if they're forced to watch you shine, that's merely a consequence. 3 weeks after transferring to Whitmore, I was sitting in a third-floor library carrel tucked into a narrow corner with a thick textbook open in front of me. I liked that spot because no one bothered me. I liked it even more because no one in my family knew I was there. Then a voice made my stomach drop. Oh my God! Francis, I looked up. Victoria stood a few steps away, holding an almost empty iced latte, mouth slightly open like she'd seen a ghost. Her eyes scanned my face, then the book, then back to me, disbelief written all over her. What are you doing here? You go to Whitmore. Since when? Why didn't Mom and Dad say anything? I closed my book, calm to the point of cold. Because they don't know. Victoria blinked rapidly. What do you mean they don't know? Who's paying? How did you even? I handled it myself. I transferred on a scholarship. The word scholarship hung between us like a slap. She stood still for a few seconds, then her voice softened. Why didn't you tell anyone? I looked at her, the one who had everything handed to her, yet never once in 4 years asked how I was surviving. Did you ever ask? I replied quietly. Victoria opened her mouth, then closed it. Her face shifted from shock to confusion, then briefly to something that looked like shame. She grabbed my sleeve. Francis, do you hate us? Do you hate the family? I looked down at her hand, then back into her eyes. No. I don't hate people I've stopped caring about. I gently pulled my arm free and gathered my books. I have class. That night my phone lit up non-stop. Mom. Dad. Victoria. I silenced it. From now on, everything would happen on my terms. The next morning my phone rang again. A name I hadn't seen in 3 years appeared on the screen. Dad. I answered. Hello. His voice was rough and urgent, caught somewhere between anger and panic. Francis. We need to talk. Victoria says you're at Whitmore. You transferred, and didn't tell your family. I leaned back in my chair. I didn't think you cared. A pause. Then he shifted tone, trying to reclaim authority. Of course I care. You're my daughter. I let out a small, humorless laugh. Am I? You once said I wasn't worth investing in. Remember? The air seemed to freeze. I could hear him inhale slowly, then exhale. That was 4 years ago, he said, as if time automatically erased damage. I don't remember saying that. I do, I replied, my voice flat. I remember every word. You said I wasn't special, that I didn't have a return on investment. You told me to figure it out myself. Silence again. But this time it wasn't empty. It was heavy. The silence stretched longer. For the first time in my life I heard my father's voice falter. Francis. I cut him off. No need to explain. I just want you to understand something. I didn't disappear. I just learned how to live without needing you. He swallowed. Fine. Then we'll see each other at graduation. We're coming for Victoria. And now that I know you're there, I'll see you too. I looked out the window calm as if I'd rehearsed this moment for years. Okay. See you there. When I hung up, I didn't shake. I didn't cry. I thought only one thing: in 3 months he will have to see me, not because I begged to be noticed, but because I'll be standing where he can't ignore me. Graduation morning, May 17th. The sky was so bright blue it almost hurt to look at. Whitmore Stadium was packed with nearly 3,000 people, flowers, balloons, the hum of conversation like a disturbed beehive. I entered through the faculty gate, dressed in the same black gown as everyone else. But over my shoulders was the gold valedictorian sash. On my chest, the Whitfield medal caught the sunlight. I sat in the VIP section near the stage reserved for honor students and speakers. About 20 meters away, Victoria was taking selfies with her friends, smiling like she owned the day. And in the very center of the front row, my parents. My father in a navy important suit, adjusting his camera lens, ready to capture Victoria's moment. My mother holding an oversized bouquet, eyes sparkling with pride. Between them sat an empty chair holding a purse and a program. Not meant for me. It never had been. The university president stepped up to the podium and began the long ceremonial remarks. I sat still, hands folded, heart pounding. Finally, he returned to the microphone. And now I have the honor of introducing this year's valedictorian and Whitfield scholar. I saw my mother lean toward my father to whisper something. My father raised his camera, aiming it directly at Victoria. Please welcome. In the front row, my father froze. His hands locked around the camera. My mother's face drained of color. The bouquet slipped from her lap. Victoria whipped her head toward the stage, my name forming soundlessly on her lips. I walked to the podium as applause thundered through the stadium, and for the first time in my life, they couldn't look past me. After the ceremony, the reception area buzzed like a marketplace, champagne glasses, clinking flowers everywhere, cameras flashing non-stop. I was shaking hands with a dean when I saw them approaching my parents, moving through the crowd like people abruptly pulled out of a pleasant dream. My father reached me first. His voice was rough, unsteady. Did you ever ask? My father opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. My mother stepped forward, mascara smudged, her voice trembling. Sweetheart, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I gave a small nod. You did know. You just chose not to look. My father stiffened. That's not fair. Fair, I cut in my tone, calm to the point of cold. You paid hundreds of thousands for Victoria and told me to figure it out myself. That's the truth. My mother reached out to hug me. I stepped back half a step. Not out of hatred, but because I no longer wanted to be pulled back into that emotional orbit. I'm not angry, I said. Anger is exhausting. But I'm not the girl who left home 4 years ago either. My father's jaw tightened. So what, you're cutting off your family? I'm setting boundaries, I replied. That's different. His voice cracked slightly. Then what do you want? Just say it. I'll do it. I looked at him steadily. I don't want anything from you anymore. That's the point. I took a breath. If you want a real conversation, call me. But whether I answer will depend on why you're calling, because you're sorry. Or because you want to feel less guilty. Then I turned away. Not running, just moving forward. The aftershocks started spreading before the reception even ended. An elegantly dressed woman, the type who collects accomplishments like jewelry, approached my mother with a bright smile. Diane, I had no idea Frances was at Whitmore and a Whitfield scholar on top of that. Her speech was incredible. You must be so proud. My mother stood there, her smile frozen in place like it had been glued on. Yes. Of course. But her eyes flickered, searching for escape. Then another person came. And another. My father's colleagues. Victoria's friends' parents. Family acquaintances. Oh wow, you kept that quiet. If my kid achieved that, I'd hang banners across town. You two must have raised her so well. And here was the painful part. My parents couldn't tell the truth. They couldn't say we neglected her. They couldn't say we invested in one child and treated the other like a loss. So they nodded, smiled tightly, swallowed hard. A few days after graduation, the video of my speech went online. It spread faster than I expected. People tagged each other, shared it, commented, so inspiring. From nothing to the top, this is what resilience looks like. And for the first time, my story belonged to me. Then my father started getting asked directly. A business partner called him. I watched your daughter's speech. Incredible. You must have guided her every step of the way. I can almost picture him standing there, mouth opening, then closing, unable to produce a single word. Not because I was getting revenge, but because the truth had finally caught up with them. 2 months after graduation, I stood in my new studio apartment in Manhattan. It was tiny. One window facing a brick wall. A kitchen barely bigger than a closet. But it had something my parents' house never gave me. Ownership of my own life. I signed the lease using my first month's salary from Morrison & Associates, a top-tier financial consulting firm. The job was intense. Long hours, brutal pressure, a constant learning curve. But strangely, I had never felt lighter. Because this time I was tired but not humiliated. Exhausted but proud. Dr. Smith called one Saturday morning. How's the big city? Brutal, I said. But exactly what I needed. She laughed softly. Good. You deserve it. The next weekend, Rebecca came to visit. She looked around my apartment and said lovingly, small and depressing. Exactly what I expected. Then she hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. You actually did it, Frankie. One evening, I found a handwritten letter in my mailbox. My mother's handwriting. 3 long pages. She wrote that she didn't expect forgiveness. That she regretted the thousands of times she chose silence. That watching me on that stage felt like looking at a stranger, and that stranger was her own daughter. I read it twice, then folded it and placed it in my desk drawer. I haven't replied, not to punish her, but because for the first time in my life, I get to decide what I say, and when I say it. I used to think love was something you had to earn. That if I studied harder, made more money, achieved more, one day my parents would look at me the way they looked at Victoria, as if affection were a prize at the end of a race, the fastest runner wins. But 4 years of swimming alone taught me something brutally honest. You cannot force someone to love you properly. You cannot earn something that should have been given freely from the start. And if you keep waiting for someone to validate your worth, you will slowly disappear inside that empty space. My value was never in the money they spent. Not in the seat at the dinner table. Not in whether I was cropped out of family photos. It existed whether they saw it or not. And the day I stood before 3,000 people, The most powerful part wasn't that they finally saw me. It was that I had already seen myself. As for forgiveness, forgiveness isn't about erasing someone's wrongdoing. It's about no one gets to rush it. Boundaries aren't selfish. Boundaries are self-respect. So, if this story speaks to you, if you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, treated like you weren't worth the effort, remember this: they were wrong. Always wrong. And don't live your life begging for someone else's approval. Live it so fully that you never need it.